Welcome to the Gorgeous Gray podcast. I am Nicole Scott, your host, registered holistic nutritionist, rest mindset coach, author of the Gorgeous Gray movement, and the co-creator of the Menopause Reset program. In this podcast, we have real conversations about aging as a woman and all the pressure and uncertainty we feel as we head into menopause and beyond. Let's face it, aging is not an easy conversation to have. But I say it's time to talk about the messy middle and offer hope when we feel like giving up on ourselves. Let's talk about our fears around gray hair, our muffin tops, and even our dry, itchy vaginas and everything in between. I will help you reconnect to your feminine energy and offer real solutions from experts in their field to navigate aging as a woman. I believe we, as women, deserve to shine even brighter in this next chapter of life. So with a sense of humor and a lot of compassion, let's dive into these vulnerable conversations. Hello, gorgeous gray women. It's Nicole Scott with another amazing episode with a dear friend and colleague of mine, Jenn Pike. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for asking me. I'm so excited for this new show for you and to be able to connect.
So good. So this episode, we are going to dive in a little bit about Jenn's story about embracing her gray sparkle. We're going to talk about getting ready for menopause and how to set our body up successfully so we don't blow up like I did and feel not so happy in your bigger pants. And then the other topic we will dive into is once we get into menopause, with very low hormones, how do we support the body in this whole new stage? So I'm really looking forward to diving in. Jenn Pike, I'm going to just give you a little bit of background, even though I could probably give her a huge intro. Jenn Pike, her background, I mean, she has been in the fitness world, as you said, coming out of the womb almost, I think. She has been in fitness most of her life. She's a yoga teacher, personal trainer, holistic nutritionist, functional medicine practitioner. She's written a few cookbooks. I actually have an old one. We were just kind of giggling and going, look at how little your kids are. They've grown up so much. This was one of my first really awesome cookbooks I got from her, which I just really loved. She has a top podcast ranked, I think you said within the top 200 in the world, you guys. This is a big deal. You definitely want to subscribe to Simplicity Sessions. I have learned so much over the years. I think you said, what, 1.5 million downloads?
Yeah.
Like incredible. So you are just such a gift to the world when it comes to education with women's health and hormones. And then she just started this new edition. So not only is she shifting, I mean, she's still doing her women hormones, but now talking to the woman in business called the Audacity Sessions, which I think I've caught in a couple of your sessions, which I think is incredible. I saw your new photo shoot, like strong and powerful and working with Laura Foster. I'm just like so excited there. So anyways, I'm going to stop there. Because I could go on with this woman. She is just a powerhouse and she has so much to offer. But we go way, way back. I'm going to just say that Jenn was probably one of the first women and health professionals that I called after my divorce 7 years ago. And you probably still remember the phone call where I'm like, Jenn, I can't even get off the couch. Something is really wrong with my broken body. So we're going to dive into that conversation because that was me getting ready for this like menopause stage. And I didn't even know what stage I was in other than help me. But before we dive into the hormone talk, let's dive in. I'm looking at you right now. Your hair is gorgeous. And I see some gray sparkle. I think you were one of the first podcasts that grabbed the attention of my book and my movement, the Gorgeous Gray movement, and you featured me. I had a lot of women from that podcast and session reach out to me like years later saying, you were the inspiration because I heard you on the Jenn Pike show.
Love it.
How about you? Tell us a little bit about your journey of deciding to say, I'm going to embrace the gray, because we've had those conversations before where you're like, I'm not ready. And I was like, that's okay. I remember being not ready.
Yeah. You know, I think for so many women in the last couple of years, what happened was the opportunity to go get my roots done wasn't there anymore when salons shut down. And for me, I had stopped doing full hair color years and years ago. I didn't want to commit to that. And I really liked my natural hair color. What I didn't love was the amount of gray coming in, because at that time I was like in my late 30s. And I was like, I was not ready. And so then I went to my hairdresser and I said, I want to do the minimal. I want to do the minimal amount. So we reverted to just doing my roots. And I did that for a couple of years, and then salons closed. And so as it was coming through, I was just like, you know what? Every other woman's is coming through. And it really, it didn't bother me anymore. And then I had time to reflect that every time I would go and get my roots done, I would actually get this irritated patch at the base of my neck, like almost like psoriasis, but only when I would have it was like contact psoriasis from the chemicals. And I tried doing organic and natural, and I have a lot of natural red in my hair, and it would just make it brassy. And anyways, so the months went on, and I was just like, you know what? I'm embracing it. And it really, for me, it also was more in alignment with my core values of my health and the things I was choosing to do. And so then a year ago, August, when salons had been opening up, I went back to my stylist and I said, I'm just going to let it go gray. What can we do? I don't want to go all the way over to blonde, because I actually went through a lot of hair loss during COVID. So just from the stress. So I said, I don't want to bring any more damage to it. And so a year ago, August, she really just feathered it in, and she did such a good job. And I have not had any stitch of color since. And now it's, November. So, and I love it. I will never go back to putting color on my hair. And I'm 43. And, it's funny. My kids who are teenagers now, sometimes like when my hair is in a ponytail, they're like, ooh, like you should, mom, you looked younger before. That's what they'll actually say sometimes, is you looked younger. And I'm like, that's fine for other people to have that, but I don't feel older with my hair this color.
Right. It looks great. And you're right. Your hairdresser did a beautiful job blending it in. Wow. It
She
takes
really
a
did.
really special hairdresser to figure that blend out. Let me tell you,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
went through a lot going,
I
oh my
remember you did.
gosh, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, that's good. I love the inspiration. And I love that, you're a health professional that's walking the walk with it. But I mean, again, I don't want to shame any woman, because it really is such a personal choice. It took me over 10 years to really feel ready at the age of 47 to make that happen. And I knew back in my 30s, as I started nutritional school, that this was probably something I should look into, but
Right.
just wasn't ready. Right. So,
And that's it. And I think it's, one of the things I would say, and I do say to a lot of women, is, yes, I've let my gray come through, but I still use filters on Instagram. I still, so it's like, and honestly, who cares?
yeah.
Like, I think if we really are trying to support women, which ultimately, anytime we show up in this capacity, regardless of what we're talking about, we have to stop throwing shade and shame at other women, because we don't know why they're choosing to continue to do it on like an emotional level. I don't know what it means for another woman to continue to color her hair or use the filter or whatever. So I think we just need to sometimes pause before we respond.
Absolutely. Holding that sacred space for all women, whatever decision they make for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Supporting. Thank you for that story. Really love it. So let's move on to that conversation of me not being able to get off the couch, because I think I'm probably an example of many of your clients where they go through a really, 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 really stressful time. They start gaining weight. They're not feeling good in their body. I was 46 maybe ish, 46. I didn't even really have a conversation about perimenopause. And here I am as a holistic nutritionist. I mean, I wasn't studying women's hormones. I wasn't reading the books. It just wasn't top of mind. And my doctor wasn't having a conversation with me about perimenopause. So I think you were really one of the first, health professionals and friends that were literally having this conversation, not very long ago. We're talking like 7 years ago. So I really feel there's this, and thank you for being such an advocate for this topic, because I feel like, I feel a school coming. Are you going to create a school?
Well, kind of, kind of, yes. But, but that is actually where so much of the struggle for us as women originates in is actually lack of education.
Yeah.
So we are born into these incredible bodies as women,
Mhm. Mhm.
and there's so many nuances and changes that happen
Yeah.
throughout our entire life. Like
Mhm.
I mean, sometimes it's like every few weeks, every few months, every few years, definitely every, 7 to 10 years, there's a
Yeah.
massive transformation that we go through, but
Yeah.
we've not been taught that. We definitely haven't been prepared for it. And
Yeah.
then we just arrive at a time in our life, like how you describe, where
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like you wake up one day and everything feels different.
Yeah.
And so we're dealing with like the
Mhm.
shock and kind of trauma of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
as we're then trying to backpedal and go and apply things that used to work in our 20s and our early 30s to our 40, 50
Yeah.
something year old body. And the body
Yeah.
is like, you got to be kidding me. I am
Yeah.
not that version of you anymore.
Yeah.
And so a lot of women are frustrated. You
Mhm.
also mentioned, going to the family doctor. They're not trained in the scope of perimenopause,
Yeah.
because if you're actually trying to look for white papers and studies on it, there's
Yeah.
not a lot, because it's very
Mhm.
difficult to run, a proper double
Yeah.
blind placebo study on
Mhm.
menstruating women.
Yeah.
And then, because to try to get all the women menstruating at the same time,
Yeah.
ovulating at the same time,
Yeah.
and then in perimenopause, the mark of perimenopause
Yeah.
is fluctuating hormones. So,
Yeah.
you could be regular for 1 or 2 months and then not for a couple of months. So that is really where
Mhm.
we as the woman, we have to be a seeker. We have to listen to shows like this. We have
Yeah.
to, attend the workshops, the master classes.
Yeah.
And I feel that that is changing and is going to continue to change, because
Yeah.
I know, like you and I'm trying to make this information as mainstream available as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, which is incredible. And I'm so grateful for all the information you have put out there, because I know I refer so many people when they come to me. I'm like, you need to just educate yourself, go sign up for the sessions. And like it really is, when you think about it, the podcast that you've put out there for so many years is like going back to school for
Hmm.
free,
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
free. Like
Yes. Yeah.
incredible. Because I'm in
Yeah.
school right now. I keep on upgrading. I get that passion and drive just like you. I just want to keep on knowing and learning and the whole bit. And I'm paying a lot of money for this. And a lot of that stuff is free online, just in simple podcasts like the one that you do like
Yeah.
every single week, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So, how can a woman who is heading into this, like, hey, my period's starting to shift, I'm not really feeling different yet in my body, but I know I could down the road when it starts. How does a woman set herself up? Because I wish I would have set myself up a lot better if I would have had the level of education I did, but I didn't. And I
Hmm.
did go through that, like gained 35 pounds, didn't feel good in my body, didn't even recognize myself, went through a lot of emotion around that. And I think there's a lot of emotion for a woman that gains weight so fast, so quickly, especially if you're a health professional. And even if you're
Yes.
not a health professional, there's a whole other level of like, oh my gosh, I'm in panic mode. I got to fix this. My doctor doesn't hear me. What is your advice to that woman who wants to set themselves up for success?
I think the first place is understanding that this isn't something that just happens over a couple of months. This is like perimenopause, which is the transition from when we go from having regular, fertile, ovulating menstrual cycles, because ovulation is really the mark of being in those fertility years. It doesn't matter if you don't want to have a child. What happens in our bodies is ovulation is the main event, and having a period is the byproduct of not actually fertilizing that egg that is released when we ovulate.
Mhm.
So when we are in our teens, our 20s, our 30s, even into our sometimes our early 40s, we're having regular ovulatory cycles. About 8 to 10 years before a woman fully hits menopause, where she hasn't had a period for a full year,
Yeah.
and then the hormones go through this flux, that is typically where you're going to start to feel some of the perimenopausal transition. So we understand that puberty for our kids, we
Mhm.
can start to see signs as early as 9, 10, definitely in the upper between there and like 16.
Yeah.
But puberty doesn't happen overnight. We notice small changes and shifts, and
Mhm.
puberty actually is about a decade long journey in
Mhm.
our bodies when we're at that age. Well, perimenopause is our second puberty. And
Mm.
so when we're younger, puberty is all about a surge of hormones coming on the scene
Right.
and a surplus of them. And it's kind of chaotic, which is why
Yeah.
our mood is impacted, the shape of our body changes,
Yeah.
our odor changes, cervical, like all of these things.
Yeah.
You think of what it was like being a girl in puberty. And
Right.
this is happening to boys too on a different level.
Yeah.
When we then are in that transition of our body starting to prepare to slow the reproductive system down on some
Mhm.
level, it's still chaotic, but now in a different way.
Yeah.
So, for a lot of women, what happens in the beginning is that estrogen still stays relatively healthy or high, and
Yeah.
now progesterone starts to be on a lower end. And that's because you may still have a period every month, but it doesn't mean you're ovulating.
Yeah.
And you can only produce progesterone if you actually ovulate.
Mm.
So, for that woman who has elevated estrogen, maybe not enough progesterone, or her detoxification pathways are congested,
Yeah.
she's going to have a lot of mood swings, a lot of breast tenderness, weight gain, heavy, painful periods, cravings. She's not going to feel good coming into when she has her period, and it's going to exacerbate. So
Yeah.
maybe she never experienced any of those symptoms historically. And now coming into, she's like, what? She gets a period more than once a month. She's
Mm.
getting spotting before her period.
Yeah.
It like drops out of the sky whenever it feels like it. Like there's
Mhm.
no rhythm anymore. And that's one way that it can show up. For
Yeah.
some women, the period itself may not change, but all of a sudden she's not sleeping how she used to.
Yeah.
She doesn't manage stress the same way. So she used to be able
Mhm.
to be steady, and then it would
Mhm.
build up and she might, kind of lose it. Now it can be the simplest thing and she just goes off. I refer to it as like you just like a little bit more prickly all the time. Um,
Yep.
and you're aware it's happening. So you'll have a
Yeah.
reaction and you'll be like, what the hell's wrong with me? Like, why am I getting so
Yeah.
worked up about ABC? Weight gain is a big one for women, specifically
Mhm.
around the waist. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
it's like, I haven't changed how I'm eating. I haven't changed how I'm exercising, supplements I'm taking, any of that. What the heck is going on?
Mhm.
Our ability to connect with other people changes and
Mhm.
shifts, which is also why relationship dynamics in perimenopause, whether it's romantic,
Yeah.
friendships,
Mhm.
coworkers, they can go through a big transition as well
Mhm.
because we're literally morphing into, our wise woman years. And so our BS meter
Yeah.
is a little higher.
Yeah.
We just don't put up with it anymore. For the woman who has a
Mhm.
difficult time speaking her truth and using her
Mhm.
voice,
Mhm.
um, and she's just lived a life of serving others and staying quiet and doesn't want to rock the boat,
Mhm.
I see a lot of thyroid issues show up.
Mm.
Just a lot of suppression. So
Yeah.
what happens in that perimenopause transition is it's not just your period changing and the other things. Thyroid health can really decline. Adrenal health can really decline. Your cognitive health. So our ability to
Mm.
be focused and
Mhm.
clear and not have brain fog and attention to detail and stay on task and not get,
Right.
shiny squirrel syndrome everywhere
Yeah.
really gets challenged. And then when you look at the lifestyle that most
Yeah.
women in their, late 30s
Mhm.
to late 40s are living, big time in their careers,
Yeah.
kid dynamic, your kids are either, nowadays it's like one end of the spectrum. Either your
Yeah.
kids are moving out and have independence, and that
Mhm.
just like as a mother, it rocks you. Like you think it's the thing
Mhm.
you've been waiting for, and
Yeah.
then you're like, oh my God, where are you going? Like, do you still need me? Or
Yeah.
the other end of the spectrum where some women aren't starting to have their children until they're in their perimenopausal
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So you take a woman who typically her ovaries would be, and that happens from the brain. Like the brain is not pumping out as much follicle
Yeah.
stimulating hormones. So the
Mhm.
estrogen in the ovaries is declining. And she's now getting pregnant, having a baby postpartum. It can
Right.
be even harder on her
Yeah.
system. And then the other thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, Nicole, is that women can sometimes have an express journey through perimenopause to menopause if there has been a lot of trauma, if there has been major stress. So you talked about a
Mhm.
divorce.
Yeah.
We can consciously uncouple. We can think we're managing
Mhm.
everything so well on the surface. And our nervous system is like, you actually are not. And
Yeah.
different things can show up. So it
Yeah.
is referred to oftentimes in women who either go through menopause very quickly,
Yeah.
less than 2 years, or it happens younger, like between the
Mm.
ages of like 36 to 43, 44. That is considered to be early menopause,
Mhm.
and sometimes can be termed premature ovarian failure,
Right.
which I don't love that language, because why we need to attach failure to a woman's body,
Right.
I don't love that languaging.
Mhm.
But those are a lot of the things that can happen.
Right. And so I remember laying on that couch getting advice from you, and you were the first practitioner and friend that told me like this story of like, you have to give yourself permission to rest. You can't go to the gym and do your high performing classes.
Yeah.
If you feel tired, nap. And you were honestly, it was very emotional for me because it was the first time I wrote this in my book about you were the first person in my life that literally gave me permission
Mm.
to slow down. I'm probably going to get emotional on this because, we as women get pushed so hard to do so much.
Mhm.
It depends on, your role model. It depends on the trauma that you came from, the stories, the whole bit. And so I just want to say thank you because it really changed so much. And you're always kind of there in my mind, because that was that first conversation that gave me permission to slow down. And it was the hardest struggle. I had to do some extra trauma work around the slowing down. And so
Mhm.
maybe talk a little bit about giving women permission to slow down and why that is important when they're starting to burn out.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's so many layers of it. And as you said, it depends on the environment we grew up in, what our mother's beliefs and story was, our grandmothers, a lot of that as women have inherited what our role was supposed to be,
Yeah.
caregiver, provider. You do all
Yeah.
of this, you take care of the house and the children, and your male partner goes
Mhm.
off to work, and
Yeah.
they're the provider, and all of that. And
Yeah.
so much has changed where, number one, there may not be a male presence, right? It could be
Yeah.
two women in the household, it may be a single woman in the
Mhm.
household. But we fought to have the right as women to be able to have our babies and have a career, to
Mhm.
take care of our families and create and be these
Yeah.
visionaries and these movers and shakers out in the world, which is so
Mhm.
amazing. However, ambitious women, like, we are not actually designed to be doing every single thing and juggling all the balls 24/7. Like,
Yeah.
physiologically, we're not designed for that.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to give up any of those parts of who we are and what's in our life, but we don't
Mhm.
realize that little by little, we are crushing our nervous system,
Yeah.
our adrenals. We are telling the woman that lives inside of us, like,
Yeah.
I know you don't feel good, but suck it up. It's
Yeah.
hustle mode, it's grind.
Mhm.
Like, we got to
Mhm.
go. There is no time for rest. You can
Yeah.
rest when your head hits the pillow.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
to burn the candle at both ends. Someone else is coming up the rear. You don't take this opportunity, another woman's going to take it
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
So it's all that energy. And then if you grew up in an environment where maybe that's how you actually received love, was accolades and accomplishments and being
Mhm.
strong and doing your best.
Yeah.
Maybe you were in an environment where you were the only strong one and you shouldered all the responsibility,
Mhm.
and that's that you were the glue. So if that
Right.
was you, then you end up creating a family where you stay the glue. And for
Mhm.
us as women, what's so fascinating, and I've done so much additional work,
Mhm.
like myself, but also
Yeah.
in my studies of understanding our psychology and
Mhm.
of being, but also our
Yeah.
psychology of our beliefs.
Yeah.
And when you spend time with women and you give them permission to
Mhm.
be honest and hold the space, what they will tell you is they are fully aware of how they're functioning that's not serving them, but they
Mhm.
don't know how to stop. And if they
Right.
change the way they show up, they may not be loved, they may not be respected, they may lose the people that matter the most.
Yeah.
They're terrified they're going to lose the job, they won't earn the same level of money, they won't create the impact. And a lot of women will just say, I literally don't know how
Right.
else to function.
Yeah.
So, for us, like, I try and use the word ambitious as opposed to like overachieving, because
Mhm.
I don't really believe, I don't like that energy there. But if you're an ambitious woman, um, it's very difficult to regulate. Are you doing this out of joy and because you want to, or is it out of survival?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're a woman that knows that she needs to slow down. She needs to love on her adrenals. What are some of your kind of top tips that you could offer, or even some favorite supplements that if they are going through that stressful time and they maybe can't slow down, but they can maybe in that short term, use some supplements or some techniques for supporting that those adrenal glands?
Yeah, so supplements can be there to help us adapt and to manage. They won't fix the
Yeah.
issue because
Right.
that's going to be, for most of us, it's a result of how we're moving through our life. But
Hmm.
that is the hardest part to change, right? Like
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me, when I really recognized, I hit my probably my biggest burnout like 2012 to 2014.
Yeah.
And my logical brain understood what I had to do,
Yeah.
but the reality of how to try to unwind all
Yeah.
of like decades of showing up that way is a lot of work.
Mm.
So things you can start to bring in, the number one thing I would say is we
Mhm.
need to have stable blood sugar. Like we have to. If your glucose and your insulin is all over the map, ladies, it's
Mhm.
going to be so hard to have focus. It's going to be hard to manage your weight and your composition. It's going to be
Mm.
hard to have that level of stamina to get through your day. It's going to be
Mhm.
difficult to sleep through the night. So,
Yeah.
making sure that you have this really beautiful balance of protein and
Yeah.
healthy fats and fiber and good
Yeah.
source quality carbohydrates. Are you hydrating? It sounds
Mm.
so simple, but when you have adrenal symptoms showing up,
Mhm.
like burnout and fatigue, plain water is not going to be enough for you
Mm.
to get it into the cells, to
Mhm.
get your minerals supported enough where
Mhm.
if you're just drinking plain, even if it's filtered water all day,
Yeah.
you are probably mineral wasting on some level.
Mhm.
So bringing in sodium,
Yeah.
potassium, magnesium into your water. So it could literally
Mm.
be something as simple as adding in, an eighth of a teaspoon of a really good quality salt, like a Redmond's
Mm.
real salt,
Yeah.
adding in a packet. They have something called Relight from their company. I use Element as well too. And
Mhm.
it is, the proper ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium. And those are the
Mm.
core minerals that your adrenals need to wire and fire together.
Mm.
So if your electrolyte balance is off, like I do functional blood work on all the women I work with. So we're measuring blood, we're measuring
Yeah.
urine, we're measuring stool. Sometimes
Yeah.
we're measuring hair. And I will tell you, the woman who presents with adrenal issues, the woman who feels like she's being rocked by her
Mhm.
hormones, her sodium and potassium are always on the floor.
Mm.
And potassium also, usually more times than the sodium. So it can make a difference adding in one packet of salt in a day.
Right.
Not like this on your food, but like literally what you're drinking. Like
Yeah.
bypass the gut,
Yeah.
bypass that and get this right into your cells and into your body. If we're talking about adaptogens, which are the
Yeah.
family of nourishing herbs and botanicals and supplements,
Mhm.
there's great combination adaptogens. So, St. Francis Herb Farm is a
Mhm.
wonderful company. They're
Yeah.
based out of Ontario, but they're throughout North America. They have something called Stressed.
Mhm.
There's other companies that are great out there, like Designs for Health,
Yeah.
AOR, and it'll typically be a blend
Mm.
of things like ashwagandha,
Yeah.
reishi,
Mhm.
potentially some licorice, which you have to be
Mhm.
careful of if you're prone to high blood pressure or
Mm.
anxiety. Panax or American ginseng, Tulsi, which is holy basil, which is probably one
Yeah.
of the more nourishing. Then
Mm.
there's oat straw, there's nettle. If focus and cognition are one of your areas you
Yeah.
struggle with, then lion's mane and cordyceps,
Mm.
which are medicinal mushrooms, can
Mhm.
be really beautiful. For the woman who is really struggling with some of those like higher estrogen symptoms, as well as anxiety and lack of focus, she just can't calm down.
Mhm.
Rhodiola can be really
Mhm.
good for that.
Mhm.
L-theanine, which is
Yeah.
withania. And then also looking to like if you typically start your day on an empty stomach with coffee,
Yeah.
consider reevaluating that. Even if you're
Mm.
using a beautiful organic mycotoxin free
Yeah.
coffee, try to get nourishment into your body first so that you
Yeah.
stabilize that blood sugar and then enjoy your cup of coffee.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of times these like little micro shifts. We're just like
Mhm.
maneuvering things, not reinventing the wheel.
Right.
And then the other thing that I would say is, I know I touched on magnesium in the
Yeah.
water, but taking therapeutic doses of
Right.
magnesium, especially in the evening for the woman who is really struggling, like magnesium is not a sedative. It's not going to knock you
Yeah.
out, but it is the most calming mineral that we have in our body. We
Hmm.
deplete it every day. It has over 800 different daily functions in your system.
Yeah.
And so, taking good quality magnesium, there's a lot of different forms of magnesium.
Hmm.
Functionally, we typically rotate, there's 6 to 8 of them that we might rotate through. The one that's the most common would be a bisglycinate.
Hmm.
It's the easiest to absorb.
Yeah.
And then if you're somebody who has really slow motility, so you're not pooping regularly, you got a lot
Yeah.
of gut issues you're working through, then adding in a citrate can
Hmm.
help to, keep you going. But
Yeah.
I do want to say, if you have to have magnesium citrate to poop, we have bigger issues going on.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe the odd time I think when I travel, and I get a little, I'll have two forms of magnesium just in case. So yeah.
Yes. And then there is magnesium threonate, which is for the woman who has a history of concussion,
Hmm.
brain injury, brain trauma. So again, this is like the benefit of when you do work with somebody one to one,
Yeah.
and you can go, like, some of the things we're talking about are general, but
Yes.
for the woman she's really struggling right now,
Hmm.
this is where you want to invest your time, your energy, and your finances in
Yeah.
working with someone
Yeah.
who can not guess what's going on,
Hmm.
but properly run those tests. And this is one of the biggest issues I have with conventional healthcare right now, is that women who are in the transition of going into menopause, no one's
Yeah.
taking them seriously. No
Yeah.
one's running the appropriate
Yeah.
test. They're not spending time listening to how they're feeling.
Yeah.
Women should not have to be dragged into menopause and then
Yeah.
crawl their way through to the other side. It's not
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. So I met with a friend yesterday in Newmarket at Nature's, probably your favorite store that you're
I
missing
miss
so
it.
much,
I
right?
miss it so much.
Yeah, so I was there yesterday and we were talking. She's 48 and I just like checked in with her on like how her hormones are going, how she's feeling. And she said, I reached out to my doctor and I asked the doctor because she's dealing with iron issues as well. And so she said, can you run all of my hormones, right? And this was through an email communication. And the doctor got back to her and said, I will run your iron, but I will not touch your hormones because one, it doesn't make sense. And like, anyways, long story short, in the email, she got totally dismissed
Mhm.
and was so frustrated. And that's why I said, like, you got to invest in, more of functional medicine or find somebody that can deep dive. And I mean, you do the Dutch hormone panel. I know you teach practitioners as well on how to read those Dutch hormone panel. Maybe just touch on that for our listeners if they are wondering, if my doctor says, I'm not going to test your hormones, are there
Mhm.
other tools for a woman to understand where she's at?
Yeah, and I would say that so here's the thing, is the body is all intricately connected. So if your hormones are out of whack, it didn't start there. Let's just say that. They're a symptom. They're the big loud
Yeah.
messenger that is just going to like mess things up for you in order for you to
Hmm.
pay attention. So I will always run at bare minimum full panel blood work. If your doctor is not willing to go beyond the basic CBC and hematology report,
Hmm.
you can pay out of pocket for that. It's
Yeah.
going to, if you're doing like a full hormone panel and a full thyroid panel, it's going to cost you less than $200 to do all of that. So you could do that through a naturopath. You can do it through a nurse practitioner. We have a clinic that launches November 11th globally, and there are all different ways to get requisitions to go to labs locally where you live to go and get that blood work done. Because, like, for instance, that woman at 48 with low iron,
Yeah.
her iron's a symptom. Her iron is not the issue. So you can go and give that woman iron until she's friggin' blue in the face.
Hmm.
It's going to do nothing for her iron.
Yeah.
Nothing, because it's a symptom. So why does she have low iron? Well, she's 48, she's perimenopausal. She's been bleeding for the better part of 35 years, probably. So she's been bloodletting every single month. If she has any type of bacterial dysbiosis, pathogen, virus, anything going on in her body, H. pylori, overgrowth of yeast, parasite, any of that, those little buggers they love heme. They will go and
Mm.
consume, they get fed first. They'll go and
Yeah.
gobble up any usable
Yeah.
amount of that so that they have the energy.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is that as we age, our stomach acid starts to lower. Our gut
Right.
has become more permeable. So there's
Yeah.
all these different reasons is
Mm-hmm.
why isn't her body absorbing iron that she's
Right.
getting in? That's question
Mm.
number one. So we
Yeah.
want to do a full panel. We would
Yeah.
look at more than just hemoglobin.
Yeah.
There's a whole heme panel plus like total iron binding capacity, ferritin, other markers. Then you want to look at with the Dutch test. So the Dutch is, I love this test for so many reasons. The
Mm-hmm.
women that we work with in our practice, we get them
Yeah.
to test every single year, sometimes more
Mm-hmm.
often if we're working on something acute.
Yeah.
This is going to give you a benchmark, ladies, to know where your hormones are at now, as well
Yeah.
as how you are metabolizing. So, what we
Mm-hmm.
do is we make a hormone, we use a hormone. Now we have to break the hormone down into something that's water soluble. We have to
Yeah.
bind it up so it's not harmful to our body.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to get it out.
Right.
So, more than 90% of the way that we get it out is through our poop, but we also urinate it out, we sweat it out, we breathe out as well
Yeah.
too. The problem is that if you're not measuring the hormone pathways, and the only way you measure hormones is in blood,
Mm-hmm.
you actually don't know how well this woman is doing in her phase 1 and phase 2 detox. So,
Right.
Nicole, we can run your test and it can show that you have, healthy, normal
Mm-hmm.
levels of
Mm-hmm.
estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. But all your symptoms would tell us something very different. And then we go and look in your phase 1 pathway, which is your liver and your gut are responsible for
Mm-hmm.
this. And you move your hormones down different pathways. So we have something called a
Mm-hmm.
16 hydroxy pathway, which is a
Mm-hmm.
pathway to our breast. It's a
Mm.
pathway to our bones, and it's a pathway to our heart health for women. So if we have a woman who is shuttling most of her estrogen down that 16 pathway, that's not great for her breast health. She's going to be more prone to fibroids, to cyst, to dense breast tissue, to breast cancer, and to different health issues going on there. The woman who has very low 16, we need to
Mm-hmm.
do things to support that a little bit because her bone health needs that estradiol.
Right.
The woman who's moving things down the second pathway, which is the 4 hydroxy, this is known as the most carcinogenic pathway because it can form adducts, which means if your body, for whatever reason, estrogen gets to the top of the slides, and there's 3 slides that your body can choose to move the estrogen down, and your body goes, I'm sending it all down the 4. That is the most destructive to our DNA. So that's where we can have actual cellular changes happen, which is where growth can happen. So, and it's not just in the breast, it could be uterine, ovarian. And then we have the 2 pathway, which is the least harmful, most protective. And so the body is choosing these pathways, and we can see in the test, are Nicole's pipes open? Is everything moving where it needs to go? Or do we have some stagnation up top? And we just need to help to open these pipes up so she can filter better. There's different things we can do for that. If the issue is phase 2, where now your body takes what you've been breaking down and it has to neutralize, it has to sulfate, it has to methylate, has to glucuronidase. This is where our genetic SNPs become
Mm-hmm.
involved. And so some of us have what's referred to as insufficient genetic SNP
Yeah.
ability, dirty genes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that doesn't mean, well, if I don't have the SNPs, it's not possible. That's not true at all. Your body's going to require different, maybe methyl donors, not from another person, from supplements and products that you would use. You might need some SAMe, you may need NAC, N-L-cysteine, you may need more magnesium, selenium, you may need CoQ10. There's other things. Like you have to look at the individual, but that's what's setting up the poop. If anything gets lost in translation, you recirculate those hormones back up into your body, and that's where you end up feeling like you have excess when you actually don't. You're
Mm-hmm.
just not filtering it out.
Right.
Now, this is important for women in perimenopause and menopause, where if you end up using bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, which I am actually a huge fan of, when you're working with a practitioner who understands testing and using it in a compounded way, which means it's
Yeah.
specific for the woman. But we need to know, not just are they working and do you feel better, but are you breaking them down and getting out of your system? The other thing the Dutch shows is your full adrenal health. How much cortisol are you actually producing, and how much of it is freely available in your body? A lot of us as women, especially if you have any thyroid issues,
Mm-hmm.
you will deactivate the cortisol that you are producing rather quickly into cortisone. And the body will do that in response to inflammation or there being some kind of an imbalance somewhere else. And then we look at neurotransmitters, which tell us a lot, like our hormones dramatically impact our mood, our focus, our brain function, all of that. So a lot of women will say when they go into menopause, like, libido, what is that? And you talk to them and it's not just no sex drive. They don't have drive, period. So they're losing that part of them that cares, that wants to like get out there. And maybe they have these moments where they want to say yes and do the thing, but they can't sustain it. So the kind of overall energy is like, I don't care, like whatever. I can't fucking do it anymore. Like that's when you talk to a woman and that's her response. That's not because of what she did on Sunday. It's because of what she's been doing for decades.
Yeah. I love that conversation. I told, well, most of my women know that I'm playing with bioidentical right now, and I am using a bioidentical testosterone with my hormone doctor. And I can totally relate to everything you just said, because I'm like, when I went through my menopause and I just celebrated my 1 year, I'm like, what's wrong with me? I have no drive, and it's so unlike me. So right away, when we looked at my Dutch and my DNA, we were like, okay, you're a candidate. It's safe for you to put some in your body because you have to make sure you're crossing all that off. And right away, within about 3 weeks, I was like, there she is. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then of course, when I started to see what I was accomplishing in the month of September and the month of October, I was like, oh my gosh, like if I would have looked at what my calendar was in the summertime without my testosterone in my body, I would have looked at that and went, there's no effing way that I would have launched a podcast or I would have started the menopause reset program, because back then, without the level of testosterone, that just, there wasn't nothing in my system. Like I was so low, and I had tried all the other like natural things to try to do to get it up there and heal my adrenals and take some time off in the summer. But it wasn't at the level that I needed it to be. So I'm so grateful that we do have tools out there and that it's available to us. But like you said, you got to find the right team. You got to find the right people. You got to find the right people that understand like how to do this right. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, and that part is so important. So there's a lot of people who can go and offer test, right? But it like there's literally 45, 50 different tests that I can go in as a practitioner and order. I am really good at about 5 of those tests. So I don't offer the other 40 under my care. I refer out. Like I do not specialize in mold, heavy metals, and Lyme. Do I understand the importance of care? Sure do. So I have people I refer those clients out to, but just because I can order the labs, I don't. For me, if I can't explain this to you at like a kindergarten level, so that like, here's the thing is that to get a test, don't go get the test if you are not invested in understanding what the test actually means and that you couldn't then explain to someone else why you're doing what you've started to do new now, you know. And this is the thing. And for us as practitioners, and this is what I do in a lot of my business mentorship, is it's our responsibility to educate our clients, not tell them. So if you're a woman who just feels like you've been told what to do, but you don't understand why, you also have to take responsibility in that. Like, did you ask more questions? Did you like, were you really present in the conversation, or were you like, just give me the friggin' supplements and tell me to things to take? And it's like now at this point in my career, because I've been doing it for 20 plus years, I'm really honest with women. And I'm like, you do not want to work with me if all you're looking for is a meal plan and supplements. I am not your girl. I'm not your girl. If you want to be educated and empowered for the rest of your life in the body that you have, come on over.
Yeah, I love that. So as we wrap up on this episode, I want to spend the last maybe 5 or 10 minutes just having that conversation about, now we're in menopause, and now we're over 50. We don't have a period. We're trying to get on top of our health, but we can't go as hard as we did in our 20s and 30s and 40s. And it looks different for us, even in the way that we might eat. I know for me, what I used to be able to get away with in my 20s, 30s, and even into my mid 40s it looks very different now today. And I know it's also to my body type and the way that I process, especially my hormones, is that I need to keep it tighter. Like
Yeah.
I can't go off for a week and a half and just binge and do the chocolate and do the chips and slow down and not move, because I could put on 5 to 10 pounds in literally a week if I went off track that long.
Yeah.
So like I say, like I can have a cheat meal
Yeah.
but then get back on track. I
Yeah.
can't do the week now or 2 weeks because it catches up. So let's talk about how to support that woman in menopause. What does that look like? And why do we have to be so tight on our schedule? It's like, it's not fair.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. The bottom line is the biggest reason that happens is when we hit menopause, we are now more insulin resistant. So our pancreas isn't functioning the exact same way. And our body's ability to uptake and utilize insulin shifts simply because we do not have the same level of estradiol. We are no longer ovulating. We don't have the beautiful buffer of progesterone, which supports the parasympathetic nervous system. We don't have a robust amount of DHA or testosterone anymore. And our adrenal function shifts and change. And as frustrating as it can be, there is some of this that is by design. When we get into our wise women years, which are the menopausal years, we are not here to still be, treating our bodies in a, non-conducive way. So she gets a little bit more like, listen, you can't wander, come back home. And that's really what it is trying to get us to understand like what feels good and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So I'm 43 and I don't have a lot of perimenopausal symptoms. My period has shifted by a day or two over the last few years. However, because of the work I do, and I'm so aware, I made a very conscious decision a few years ago to completely change how I work out, to change the way that I feel, because I want to be in front of it. I work with my own health and hormone team where I do the labs and the things because I know for me, I'm not going to wait till I'm in menopause to explore bioidentical hormones.
Yeah.
And so it's like part of that is we can't have the alcohol like we used to. You just, ladies, please listen. I know this is like la la la, like I don't want to give up my wine and all that because we have this level of joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd question you to question yourself whether it's joy it brings you or if it's numbing that it brings you.
Yeah.
Because there's this great thing that happens with a glass or two where we can just disassociate. And I'm not saying, listen, it's not that I don't have alcohol every now and again. I'm very intentional about all of it, but we don't process it the same way. You are more histamatic when you go into menopause because you don't have the estrogens. So the things that you used to be able to eat previously that didn't cause you an issue, now you might get like have a glass of wine and you're congested. You feel hungover when you didn't before. You're bloated, you're gassy, you can't sleep at night. Start to pay attention to all these cues. Our body does much better as we move into menopause with things like healthy sources of protein and a good amount of good quality animal protein. Doesn't have to all be animal. Phytoestrogens. So, like our ground flax and various, starchy vegetables and things like that. And this is when I will bring in, organic, non-GMO, cold water washed soy. And I will bring that in for the menopausal woman in the first half. So I use lunar cycling for a lot of my menopausal women. So I won't have her do it every day, but I'll have her do it in that first half when her body would have been in that higher follicular type of energy. How we move, strength training has to be the root. So resistance training, making sure we're continually working on building muscle, and then cardio. It's great to do some burst and HIIT training a couple times a week, but less than 30 minutes. In fact, less than 20 minutes. And then for your actual cardio, it's more under what's called MISS, which is moderate intensity, steady state. So lace up your shoes, get outside. Your body's not interested in massive impact when you go into menopause. We can't recover the same way. So oftentimes that shows up in joint pain, inflammation, and the harder you work out, the more weight you gain.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
definitely
yeah,
have changed that for sure.
yeah.
And it feels good in my body. You and I both recommend Juice Plus as a supplement. I know
Mhm.
that I'm appreciating it even more in menopause. Um, One, because I am quite a stickler in regards to my calories when I eat. I know today there's no way that I am getting 7 to 13 fruits and vegetables in my diet.
Right.
I just am not.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to get 2 good solid servings of fruit is
Yeah.
kind of what I allow myself to do. Maybe 3 at the max. Um, as we close off, like, why do you still recommend Juice Plus after all these years? And why do you think it's important to our women who are in this stage of life?
I think it's important always, but the amount of phytonutrients and antioxidants that we require when our hormones go in flux and we're no longer producing on a pituitary and ovarian level those hormones, the more we need.
Yeah.
So the way that we fight off the free radicals and
Mhm.
some of the cellular damage that can happen as a result of age and just, time is by bringing in more of those plant-based nutrients.
Yeah.
What I love about Juice Plus, even more in menopause, is that a lot of women will go through big digestive changes. So maybe they can't eat all the veggies anymore
Yeah.
because they're gassy and bloated. Well, the beautiful part about putting it
Yeah.
into a capsule is it bypasses the gut on that level and it's bioavailable. It's going to get right where it needs to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the reasons. The other thing I love is with there being different ingredients like cherry and
Yeah.
acerola and all like
Yeah.
and camu. We're getting a huge source of vitamin C, which nourishes the adrenals.
Yeah.
Both of those nutrients themselves help melatonin production to help
Mhm.
our rest.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons as to why, and a lot of the greens and the brassica family,
Yeah.
they're rich in indole 3 carbinol and dim,
Yeah.
sulforaphane, so they're helping that phase 1 detoxification process, and they're simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Just as simple, right? I'm about simple with my menopausal women as well too. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it real, and add to that strong foundation. We could talk all day, Jen. We're wrapping up here. Thank you so much. That went by so
I
fast. I'm
know.
just always amazed of how much you know. And I'm so grateful for the amount of work and information that you are putting out there to the world and really making a huge impact, and upping the level of education. I saw a doctor about 4 years ago, and he was young, right out of I think Western, and he was dealing with girly bits and stuff, and he was really cute too. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm literally letting him peek at my vagina, but I was like, whatever. But of course, afterwards, when he gave, here's 4 different, things that we can recommend. And of course, that they're like, and we'll take your, uterus out. It was like a small fibroid that I was dealing with. I said, have you heard of Jenn Pike? He's like, no, but he was very open. I said, listen, there's a whole new level of hormone education, and I have a feeling that you have not been educated. And he goes, well, this is all we've been educated on. And it was literally the 4 options. And I said, well, would you be open if I wrote her name down? Would you follow her and listen to her? And he was. I was so grateful for that. I said, here it is. Follow her on her podcast, and you will be blown away, because the stuff that I was like just giving it to him, right? But he was open, which was nice, because he was probably in his early 30s and maybe
Yeah.
3 years into his career. So I'm glad that you're getting this information out. Thank you, my friend Jen. I really appreciate today.
Thank you for having me, Nicole.
I want to say thank you for listening to today's episode. If this message landed for you, make sure to leave a review and tag me, Nicole Scott, at Gorgeous Grey Movement, and make sure to share with your friends. You can head over to my free Facebook community, Gorgeous Grey Movement, or subscribe to my YouTube channel for more inspiring interviews. If you are still struggling and need additional support, you can take a look at my website, nicolescott.ca, and learn more about my new Menopause Reset program that I'm so excited for. Until next time, ladies, be well and own your sparkle.